What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I want to break down why the market has sold off even more. But despite the sell-off, we're seeing the market's in a critical support that could cause a bounce. So I want to break down if the market's about to bounce or not, and what you should be watching for as time goes on. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposit $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposit $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for a 3.6% APY base rate plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months, making it a total of an 8.1% APY. The offer ends very soon, so please check out my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So the market got another pullback, and I said in my video from yesterday that if SPY loses 660, expected to test these lows that we saw from October. The lows of that October period range between 652 to 655. That is where SPY went to today. Now, for tomorrow, we have Nvidia's earnings alongside the FOMC minutes, and that could be a make or break for this market. But this level is vital because SPY touched this zone right here at 652. We bounced. We touched 655 and bounced. We touched 652 and bounced. So the majority of the time when we touch this support, we like to bounce. And today we touched this support, and we're going to see if we get a nice bounce off this level or not between 655 and 652. Now, we're going to see depending on what data comes out, but there are some indicators that suggest that the market might try to bounce because of what we're seeing. Because when I zoom out, and please don't mind all these lines that are kind of congested, but I just want to say something very important. SPY has dropped about 5%, almost 5% since it was at all-time highs, which is a very healthy pullback. It's not like this is a crash, it's a healthy pullback. Secondly, when you take our fib level from the low we saw in October, when you take it from this low and you go back up to the all-time high, you will see that SPY bounced exactly where this light blue line is. I know it's a little hard to see. It's the 0.786 fib level. So that is typically where you like to see big bounces. So far, we have some bullish confluence that suggests that this could be either a big support or a potential bottom, because SPY does love to bounce between the 650 to 655 zone historically, and we have a lot of reason to believe that we might be bouncing. But of course, I like to be very unbiased. I don't know what's going to truly happen after Nvidia's earnings, so I can't make promises about that until we get some confirmation. So let's break down the news, and I'll talk more about the charts in the next couple of minutes. I'll also break down the QQQ and the others. So first and foremost, the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond President Tom Barkin said on Tuesday that the U.S. central bank is feeling pressure on both sides of its dual mandate, with inflation still running above the targets and the jobs growth continuing to soften. Not the best of news, at least so far. He mentioned that there is a kind of like, a little bit of a pullback when it comes to like spending. And at the same time, we're not really getting the best inflationary data because inflation is still kind of like elevated. And then at the same time, he also talked about how the labor market may be weaker than the available data indicates, and that we have to be prepared for what's to come. Now, he does still appear to be optimistic about the inflationary outlook, saying that once again, depending on what we're getting in terms of data, although the data is somewhat elevated, it isn't likely to increase by much. And simultaneously, he implied the Fed has everything under control. However, Barkin gave no indication that he will support some kind of cut because it seems like he is still indecisive and waiting on the data, which makes a lot of sense. We still have a little bit less than a month until we get the next FOMC meeting, and that gives the Fed some time to sort of like look at the data and be very cautious, be very, very picky. So right now, there's a 49% chance we get a cut from the Fed and about a 50.6% chance we get a pause. I'm hoping that the data that starts coming out, especially with the labor market weakening, will increase the probabilities of us getting a cut, but this depends on lots of different factors. One thing worth mentioning is that we got initial jobless claims today. This data was a little bit above expectations. Continuing jobless claims was a little bit high as well, showing some weakness in the labor market, but it's not that bad, at least so far. But we're still waiting on more data. The data that's coming out is quite delayed. Now, there is some more news. Tomorrow is going to be, by the way, Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. We have very, very minor data from the balance of trade, exports, and imports data. It's all quite minor, but all the data is minor in the morning, but starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 o'clock p.m., we have what's known as the FOMC minutes. So, what is the FOMC minutes? It is not the FOMC meeting. It is simply a paper report that gives us a summary of the meeting and more insights from different Fed officials and Fed speakers. That could cause a lot of volatility. It's going to either cause the market to get a rug pull or a big rally to the upside, depending on what the Fed ends up announcing during this meeting. So, make sure you're prepared for this. Make sure you're ready. The Fed may give us some very important announcements. So, be ready for that at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If the Fed is more like hawkish and uncertain, it could be a little bit more bearish for markets. But if they are in the middle, and if they remain more optimistic and they talk about the possibility of a cut, that could help the market to some extent. If they're very indecisive and they keep saying we have to wait on the data, it may have a more neutral effect. So we'll see about that. That's the first catalyst for tomorrow. The second one is this. Tomorrow, before the market opens, we have Target, Wix, TJ Maxx, and Lowe's all announcing their earnings, lots of retail. And then after market close, we have the big dog, Nvidia. Nvidia has its earnings, which is going to be very impactful. It's going to be affecting the whole semiconductor industry, and it's going to be having a very significant effect on tech, in my opinion, especially the NASDAQ and any stocks that kind of like follow the NASDAQ, especially tech. I think it's also going to be affecting the S&P 500, so be ready. Nvidia has been dumping approaching its earnings, but we're going to see if it bounces or not, depending on their outlook and what they tell us about their AI sector. We're going to see what happens with their data centers, their growth, and their overall new semiconductor designs and such. A lot of good news is going to be coming out. But at the same time, will the news be enough to wow investors? We'll have to see about that. I think Nvidia can have a very, very big effect on this market, so it's going to be very key. So we don't truly know what's going to happen. That's why I like to remain very, very unbiased. The fear and greed index is currently at extreme fear. Typically, when this happens, it means the market's going to form a bottom and we're looking for a bounce. Momentum's at extreme fear as the market's getting closer to the 125 daily moving average on the S&P 500, which tells us that once again, there's a lot of fear right now. The put to call option ratio, it's at extreme fear right now. That's typically what happens when the market's going to form a bottom, and the VIX is at extreme fear as it's getting close to this high up here, which is where it typically rejects. So honestly, guys, everything is just fearful. People are panicking. They're saying the stock market's going to crash. There's no rally coming. I'm wrong to think that. I've heard a lot of comments that say that. It's understandable. If you feel that way, I respect your opinion. But this is what typically happens when the stock market dumps really hard. When everyone starts to turn bearish, that is when you should be greedy. That is when you should change your perspective, because it seems like the majority of people are so bearish right now. They think the market's about to crash. It's the end of the world. Just a week ago, we were near all-time highs. Okay, we're only down like 5% from the all-time high. It's not even that bad of a drop. And I just want to note that SPY still has a gap over here. There's another gap up here. There's lots of gaps left closer to all-time highs. The QQQ in particular has lots of gaps. There's a gap up here at 620, another big gap to fill at 632. So what makes you think that we can't reverse and fill these gaps? If that happens, it could continue to just completely squeeze shorts and basically trick a lot of people. So I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm saying that is a possibility that you should be open for, and we should always be open-minded no matter what. So just hypothetically, okay, if we're really bearish, if you guys in the comments are correct that the market's about to crash, a big correction is here, it's possible. But what you want to see is you want to see SPY continue to reject and lose that 650 area. If that fails us, I would not rule out a bigger dump. If we lose that support, I think that these resistances becoming supports at 647 to 644 could be tested on SPY, and we could continue to dump into like the 640s if we get a big rug pull on SPY and lose 650. Now, if we're bullish, you want to see SPY basically reclaim at least that 666 area, the daily 50 EMA. If we reclaim that, we could be looking for 673 or above. So that's what I'm seeing thus far as our two possibilities. Now, like I said before, guys, always be open minded, always be ready for anything. But what do I think is going to happen? Well, I'm a little bit concerned about Nvidia. The share price looks kind of weak here. We're nearing this big support near this 178 to 180 area. Nvidia does like to bounce near here. So I'm hoping Nvidia gets a nice bounce, but it all depends on what we end up seeing. So I could basically look at the 4-hour time frame on Nvidia, and what you'll see is that this looks like, a bearish wedge right now, which is not the best of pieces of news. Typically, these setups do lead to more downside, but we'll see just to be safe, because with earnings, you never know what's going to happen. There were times when Nvidia was on big downtrends forming these wedges, and it just ended up breaking to the upside instead, completely tricking the bears. In fact, this setup right here, we have like a double top, a rejection. We continue to downtrend like this, only to squeeze back up. This pattern right here kind of like resembles this one over here. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So see this yellow line? We were on this big downtrend, then we just broke out. We're on this big downtrend. Are we about to get a big breakout after earnings? We'll see about that. I'm going to be very, very unbiased. So I think that we're at a big support, and SPY has tested the 0.786 fib level. Typically, the most likely possibilities we get a bounce. I think that I am leaning more in favor of SPY trying to get back towards the 668 to 670 area for a very big bounce. I think that's going to happen starting tomorrow after Nvidia's earnings or after the FOMC minutes. I think that's what's going to happen, because we also have a bullish divergence. And I think that the market is setting itself up for a big squeeze for the end of the year. I still hold that view. I will change my mind if something really bad happens, but for now, I think that what's going to happen is I predict the Fed is going to cut in December, and the market doesn't fully realize it yet, or at least that's how they're making it seem. That's how the market makers want you to think. I think that they're going to get a cut because of the weakness in the labor markets, and I think the Fed is going to have to ease on policy as soon as possible. I think that the Fed is going to begin to buy back treasury bonds, excuse me, and that's going to cause yields to essentially drop. And I think that there's a good chance that we see the Fed ease on policy. And I think that that could be a very bullish catalyst to finish off the year. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. And I think there's a good chance that we basically consolidate tomorrow, then we see a nice bounce on SPY. That is the camp that I'm in right now, and we'll see if I end up being correct or not. But like I said before, always be open-minded in case I am wrong, because I'm willing to admit that I can make mistakes and I can't predict everything the market will do. But I just want to say, I think we're going to see a nice bounce on SPY and the QQQ, and Nvidia is going to shock a lot of people. I could be wrong, but we'll see. On the QQQ, we love to bounce near 590 to like 585, or 590 to 595, excuse me. We also tested our 0.786 fib level. If we're bearish on the QQQ, you want to see us essentially lose 590 and 585 to be bearish. If we're bullish, you want to reclaim 605. Imagine if everyone is so bearish right now and they give us a big squeeze back up to 612 on the QQQ or above. I would not be surprised if they try to fool us. Maybe Nvidia's earnings or the big FOMC minutes report helps us bounce. We'll see just to be safe. The IWM is also trying to bounce right now. It already started to bounce. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 230. If that fails us, we could be dumping to fill the gap at 226. But if we're bullish, we need to reclaim 236. If we do, we're looking for a nice breakout. I'm hoping we try to push for 236 or above, so we'll see just to be safe. On ES, we're technically on a bit of a downtrend, but here's the thing about this. There is this support zone, and ES basically tested this. This is pretty much where the lows were for October. The October lows, for the most part, were tested. And if we lose 6,600, I will lean more bearish. But if we hold where we currently are, there's a good chance this is about to bounce. So lose 6,600 is bearish. If we don't, we're looking for an attempt to get back to 6,700 for a temporary bounce. I lean more in favor of that. I think that Nvidia is going to shock a lot of people. I could be wrong, but we'll see. On NQ, if we're bearish, you want to see us lose 24,000 to dump. If we're bullish, you want to see us get back above 25,000. If we break that, we're looking for a nice breakout. Hopefully we get a bounce. We'll see if Nvidia helps us. On Bitcoin, we need to break past 93,800. If we break that, we're looking for 97,000. But if we reject here, we could be dumping back down to 88,000. Hopefully we kind of like dip and return and look for 96,000 as our target. On Tesla, we've been dumping for months on Tesla, but here's the thing about this. We touched 380, we bounced. I want to see us base at 390. If we could like form a base here, we could be looking for an attempt to reverse. And if Tesla could reclaim 425, I think that this is going to bounce very hard. So it could be making a higher low. I want to see if Tesla can make a higher low at 390. As long as you don't lose 380, we could be looking for a bounce from there. Nvidia, check this out, guys. Look at the two yellow lines. Do you guys see the pattern here? This setup was very similar. We have like a double top, a rejection, bounce a bit, you dump, and then you just continue to downtrend as time goes on. And then you get a breakout, right? Even if you're forming a bearish wedge, Nvidia still could break out. So we have a bearish wedge here. Will Nvidia do the same thing? Will we kind of like follow this trend where we kind of like downtrend, then we get a big breakout? Will Nvidia do the same thing? We're on this large downtrend with the double top. And are we about to see a big breakout after earnings? If we do, this could send the market higher. I hope this is as clear as possible how similar these patterns look. This could be a sign Nvidia is going to bounce. Apple's consolidating. Is it about to dump to start filling gaps, or are we about to get bought back above 270? It depends on the Fed and other factors, but I would not rule out the possibility of a test of 270. For a few more tickers, I'm going to be kind of quick with this. Netflix is favoring 115 for a temporary bounce. MSTR is favoring a test of 210. If that breaks, we're looking for 225. Celsius has a double bottom. If that breaks, we're looking for 42.5 and then 45. Supermicro has resistance at 36.17. If that breaks, we're looking for 37.5. Palantir is technically on a downtrend. We're going to see if we bounce or not, but we're looking to see if we can rebound off this support near 174. Rivian has a nice looking double bottom. We're looking for an attempt for 15.2 to 15.45. SoFi could attempt to rebound as long as we don't end up losing 26. This could be looking for an attempt for 27.68. AMD is on a downtrend. It's going to be favoring a move back down towards 224 temporarily. But Nvidia's earnings is either going to cause a double bottom to form, causing this to bounce, or we're about to get a big rug pull to 219. Hopefully, it's a double bottom near 225 and we bounce. ARM is looking kind of weak here, but this could be a divergence, which could take us back up to 142. PayPal's on a bit of a downtrend. We're going to see if we continue to reject below 60 or if we get bought back up above 63.39. Coinbase has a bullish divergence. We're going to see if we get bought back up above 279. If so, we could be looking for a bounce. Amazon needs to hold 222 to 220. If 220 fails us, we're going to be more bearish, looking for 215. But if we hold 220 to 222, we could be looking for a bounce towards 227. On Meta, if we could break past 607, we're looking for a break towards 615. But if we lose support at 580, we're looking for a dump. I'm looking for a test of 607 or above. Google is consolidating. If we end up losing 282, we're looking for a dump. But if this holds, we're looking for essentially 290. And finally, Microsoft has a bullish divergence. If we lose 485, we're looking for a dump. If this holds, we could be looking for a nice rebound back up towards 500. Oracle also has a double bottom here. We're going to see if we break 223. If we do, we're looking for a attempt for 230. And finally, DJT looks like it wants to test 11.5. The VIX has an inverse head and shoulders, but keep in mind it does love to reject between 25 and 30. So will the VIX kind of like pop a little bit as the market comes down and then reject like this? Or does the VIX end up just failing? Could the top be in for the VIX and we're about to sort of like turn here as the market's about to form its top? We will have to wait and see. But for now, it does look a little bit more bullish, which could signify that there might be some downside still coming. The 10-year is kind of like forming an inverse head and shoulders. We'll see how the FOMC minutes affects this. The dollar is also starting to pump, which tends to be bearish, but we'll see if it rejects. And crude is kind of flat. So I think that for now, the market could be trying to form a base here, and the odds favor SPY and the QQQ from a technical standpoint, trying to bounce off their 0.786 fib levels, which aligns with a 5% correction so far. But we don't know for sure if this is truly going to be the bottom until we get some more data. I would like to see Nvidia surprise a lot of people and get a bounce. It's been downtrending for the entire month, and we had a very similar setup back in October before this thing broke out. So are we about to see a similar setup leading to a breakout, or is this about to get a rug pull? Hopefully this setup right over here repeats itself and we're about to get a big breakout. I would love to see that, and that could really help the market reverse. Nvidia could be the big knight in shining armor for the markets to help us start to reverse, and then the Fed could be once again the next factor We will see if we're about to get a reversal or not. But I just want to say that I do lean a little bit more in favor of bulls, that we might be getting a bounce when people least expect it. Based off the past and based off our setups, we will see just to be safe. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Let's be very, very unbiased traders, and we'll see what happens tomorrow, as it's going to be a very crazy day. Have a good day, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and peace out.